Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Friday morning to you all. I hope everyone's doing awesome out there this morning and having a fantastic start to your Friday. Great ending to your week, beginning to your weekend out there. Here to break down the latest on what's going to happen weather-wise for your day. We'll talk about how there's two areas to watch for a chance of strong to severe storms. We'll mention the flooding risk once again for South Florida. Continue to have a lot of tropical moisture down there, but I do think today may be the last day of a lot of moisture, and I would say yesterday was really the last day of a whole lot of moisture, if that makes any sense. But things are going to start to calm down a bit in Florida as it's been a hectic week with the flooding, tropical rains. I'm sure some folks down there feels like it's been raining for a week straight, and maybe for some people it has been. But we'll break down that. We'll talk about everybody else in the lower 48, talk about how the heat is really going to start to really flex out there as summer continues to do its thing. I know technically it's not summer yet, but it certainly is going to feel like it and has been feeling like it out there for a lot of people, especially across the south, but even across the plains too. So we'll break all that down for you folks, get you covered, and then we'll give you some updated information on the severe risk to come from the Storm Prediction Center, and then we'll give you an update on the tropics like we've been doing over the last, I would say, week or two now, and talk about what we're seeing out there, give you the latest information on 90L, Invest 90L, talk about still the chance of maybe a tropical system developing in the southern sections of the Gulf of Mexico, the Bay of Campeche, near Central America. And then we'll take a look at another little area that could emerge as something to really pay attention to here in the next several days. So we'll break it all down for you folks. If you notice lack of energy this morning, I'm very tired, only about 5.5, 6 hours of sleep. And for some people, that's plenty of sleep. For me, that's on the lower side. So a little bit tired this morning for sure. So hopefully we can muster our way through this video. If you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, as always, please put those in the comments below. Let's get rocking this morning. So, as mentioned, some moisture still dancing around in southern sections of Florida. Most of it's off the coast, though, down here in Cuba and the Bahamas, the extreme western tip of the Florida Keys out here. Certainly seeing some rain, it looks like. A little bit of shower activity along and just ahead of a frontal boundary sweeping across areas of the Ohio Valley, the Midwest, and the Northeast. In fact, we'll get some strong severe storms across areas of the Northeast today, and we're going to speak on that here in a second. We'll have a timestamp up. But along the I-95 corridor, could certainly have that risk of some summer type like strong to severe storms. So if you are a storm fan, you'll enjoy a day like this. If not, then certainly this is a day that's going to get the anxiety going regardless. I hope you guys know that today is not going to be some huge risk of strong to severe storms in the Northeast anywhere, but certainly a risk. But we do have a bit of a spin going on out here across the Rockies. So there is a cutoff low in the Rockies kind of embedded into this ridge. This will get the showers and storms going. They're already going, in the form of mainly showers across sort of the central Rockies, the high plains, but we will have a vigorous line of storms that kind of shoots out of northeast Colorado and then moves through the central high plains, and we'll break that down too. There's some moisture across the northern Rockies too, and a little bit starting to enter the Pacific Northwest also. So that's what's going on right now. Watches, warnings, and advisories. Check this out. Winter storm watch is up for the Rockies and Montana. I'm not expecting any huge amounts of snow, and this isn't extremely rare by any means. But still pretty wild. I mean, we're pretty deep into June now. 4th of July is right around the corner. Winter storm watches are up. You got high wind watches too, and the higher elevations way up there in Montana. But we could expect some snow also in the Cascades, and I'll show you that when we get to the the western U.S. time frame here, timestamp. But you do got the excessive heat watches, the heat warnings down here. I'm sorry, not watches. You got warnings. So it's going to be hot once again. Heat advisories in northern Utah. And we do have red flag warnings. So I know it's hard to you look at this and you look at this, it looks really close. Excessive heat warnings more in that darker pink here, almost purple. This brighter hot pink, that is a red flag warning. So definitely hot across the southwest again. And you continue to have the flood watches across South Florida. Excessive rainfall outlook, just small marginal risk across the northeast and the plains, basically where you're going to get moisture. And then you do have that moderate risk. Once again, which means there's a 40% chance of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance within 25 miles in a given location. This does include Miami, southern tip of Florida. So just be aware of this, guys. Flooding will be a concern. And it's not that you're going to have as much rain falling today. It's just that everything's saturated. So if you get an inch of rain, it could cause flooding. When you back it up to like the beginning of this week, an inch of rain wouldn't have caused flooding. So Storm Prediction Center, just note some of this could tweak. We do have that slight risk in the Northeast, some higher populated regions, Boston, New York City, including this, down to Philadelphia, Baltimore. Basically I-95 corridor points west, but not all the way west to like Buffalo. So really just almost the entire interior to, I would say, let's just not make this any confusing than what it has to be. If you live in the yellow area, slight risk of a level 2 out of 5 risk of strong to severe storms. Marginal risk all the way down to the Central Alps, all the way up to Caribou, Maine. And then we got a slight risk across areas of the Front Range and really more so eastern Colorado into areas of Nebraska, Kansas, level 2 out of 5 across the high plains here. Marginal risk going all the way up to Billings, all the way down to Santa Fe, almost Albuquerque down here. So we do have a pretty large area of real estate that does run that risk of strong to severe storms. So what is this driven off of? Tornado risk, just a 5% risk here, but there is a risk. And there's always a risk. There's even a risk, even though it's not shown on a color here on the screen. You never can completely rule out a tornado, but it's the confidence is high enough, I guess you would say, to put a 2% risk across the plains here. But it's really the wind threat. 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour. Same thing in the yellow area right here, but if you notice the black outline region, that's also a 10% risk of winds exceeding 75 miles per hour or higher. So there's a chance of significant winds. You go back and you look at yesterday's severe weather risk. I saw some gnarly pics, pictures of stuff, but I didn't really hear about anything too crazy. But you guys in the Midwest, let me know what you saw yesterday. But the hail outlook, the yellow, 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. So there is a risk of hail even in the Northeast today. So we look at the Southeast. Once again, daylight 3 or 4 in a row. Really the only area to mention is South Florida. But, the whole entire peninsula of Florida could get, a chance of showers and storms. But, we make our way into this afternoon. We continue to get rain, mainly hitting and slamming Key West, but even all the way up here into Miami. Maybe all the way up to Fort Myers could get it too. A lot of shower and storm activity across the Bahamas. I really feel bad for you if you did take a vacation to the Bahamas this week. Had to be an awful weather week. It just always stinks when stuff like that happens. Heck, I have a 4th of July get-together planned. I normally don't do anything for the 4th of July, but just relax, chill, and just play in the water, shoot some fireworks in the evening, but actually have an entire huge get-together, kind of like a block party in my cul-de-sac. And I got rented a water slide and everything, really hoping that, it doesn't rain all day or something crazy. But anyways, prayers for that for sure. But the rest of the Southeast looking pretty good. Really is. It's getting very hot today, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But, rain dancing around here. We could get some bigger storms. So, there is a chance for some more northwest flow up here in the Appalachian Mountains, but we'll talk more on that here in a second. But Kentucky does run a risk. Maybe Louisville points south, southeast, maybe a storm or two. Possible. Nothing too crazy, though. And we could get some showers in North Carolina to the overnight hours, but I really don't see it being a big deal. Down here in Florida, though, a bigger of a deal, and we'll continue to take it to about midday. Heaviest rain really confined to the extreme southern tip of Florida. Once you get north, isolated pop-up downpours and storms. But as we get into the daytime heating, we could get some big storms later this afternoon, I would say, into this evening. Watch northeast of Tampa. These could drift into the city. Interior sections of Florida. Watch how Orlando points south. Big storms are possible into the evening, and then they just kind of, dwindle away. Strong to severe, it's possible. It is. You look at the Storm Prediction Center, not even a marginal risk down here, but a threat of thunderstorms. Rainfall between now and the next 24 hours. Blend of all models is saying inch or two, but you're probably going to get a few inches over the Florida Keys, Key West, things like that. You're already getting a lot of rain right now. You get a little bit further north, maybe nothing, maybe a quarter to a half inch. So it just depends. And definitely rains across the Bahamas for sure. Now we go up to the Northeast this morning. Not a lot of ruckus out there, not a lot going on. But we start to take it into midday. storms start to fire up right at lunchtime. I mean, lunchtime to 1 p.m., you see these storms firing up right into here. We'll get a closer look here in a second. Some showers develop into more so storms back here. I mean, maybe even as far west as like eastern Ohio. Look at these storms getting into the western panhandle of West Virginia here. Some storms down here in southern Ohio. There's a chance of some of these to reach severe limits. Storms firing here in areas of eastern, southeastern Maine. These storms are rumbling through southern New England, affecting all the way down to Long Island. These storms are just cruising across eastern PA, maybe Philadelphia. This is getting into 5, 6 o'clock this afternoon. If you got any outdoor activities across New York City, could be a stormy evening for sure. Definitely could. Show some storms right over the city, right around 7, 8, 9 p.m. And we continue to move this and maybe just widespread rains across southern New England to the late evening hours, Boston. And then we get into tomorrow morning, a lot quieter. But just a closer look at some of these individual areas. The Mid-Atlantic, here comes these storms, wondering about the time frame, 5 p.m. Showers and storms just east of and around the Pittsburgh area. Look at these storms moving through northern New Jersey, starting to affect the New York City area. Long Island, some storms cruising through central sections of PA around 7 p.m. You get down to Virginia, very much more so like isolated Delmarva, maybe some isolated downpours, nothing too crazy, I don't think. And then we get into like the late evening hours. Southern New England looks to be the main story, just some more so just like moderate rain out there, maybe some rumbles of thunder, and then it's over with. And then we move a little bit on up the road to Maine. I think the storms, have a chance to be a little bit more intense a little bit further north. You kind of look down here, Boston looks like they're getting hit by some storms mid-afternoon. These storms look pretty intense around Bangor. Augusta? You guys, they could drift to the coastal regions of Maine eventually. These could certainly produce some large hail, damaging winds, and just be aware of that. And 5, 6, 7 p.m., these are slow movers. I mean, 4 hours, they barely move. And then the energy finally gets on off the coastline here in the North Atlantic. But certainly be mindful of some really gusty winds. If we look at the predicted wind gust swath from this, let's look at this. Doesn't show anything too crazy. It really doesn't. This is pretty much through the entire event. Some pockets of 30, 40 mile per hour wind gusts are possible with these storms, but we'll see. You guys have to let me know what you see up here in the Northeast today. South Central U.S., Texas has gotten kind of quiet, but a lot of rain, storm, shower activity across Colorado, New Mexico. Albuquerque, Santa Fe is probably going to see some shower and storm activity. I think the chances of severe weather is a little bit higher to like your north and northeast, but could get some big storms here in eastern Colorado, areas of eastern New Mexico. We'll see what happens, but I do think the epicenter of the worst weather really gets going here in northeast Colorado and in western Nebraska, and I do think we could get some more intense storms than what this is showing in like western Kansas. This moisture will try to make it all the way into the panhandle of Oklahoma and Texas, southeastern Kansas, but it looks like it sort of shuts off here and then ends. But the rest of the southern plains, south central U.S., you guys have finally gotten somewhat of a break from all the crazy weather you've dealt with for not only the last few weeks, but the last few months. So I hope you guys are enjoying it. I know it's probably hot out there still, but that's just typical summer flow. North central U.S., the Great Lakes region looks pretty quiet. Most of the Ohio Valley looks pretty quiet, besides some storms that could pop up in southern Ohio, Kentucky, West Virginia. Some isolated downpours for sure are possible to likely. I should have mentioned that more so in the northeast time frame or the southeast, but really the big storyline comes here. We could get some storms in Montana, western sections of South Dakota. The big storyline is these, though. These storms right here, and they cruise across Nebraska. We'll just go on and get just a closer look at this. Here's these storms. I'd say they start to intensify as far southwest as northeast Colorado. So if you live in northeast Colorado and you're tuning in, maybe around 6 p.m., these storms could be rumbling through your general area. But I really think they'll kind of maximize, if you will, around like 8 to 9 p.m. in western Nebraska. So if you live out here, these storms could be producing damaging winds. There is a risk of hurricane force winds 75 miles per hour or higher. Hail is a threat, and there is a tornado risk embedded in this line of storms But these will continue, basically almost sweep across the entire state of Nebraska. In fact, I'm kind of almost not confused, but I would say that, the slight risk probably would need to be just a little bit smaller and really just confined to Nebraska. But, that's why you don't always just look at model guidance. You always just look at the atmospheric players out there. But you take it to about almost midnight. These storms are cruising right through central Nebraska. Looks like they start to lose a little bit of steam into the wee hours of the morning. But certainly if you live in Lincoln, Omaha, right before the roosters crow, could be some storms rumbling through your area, getting all the way into eastern Iowa eventually. So be aware of a stormy morning tomorrow morning if you live in those areas for sure. So, you look at the updraft velocity swath, highest tornado risk is right in here, and this is indicated well by the updraft velocity swath. You see these areas in highlighted colors indicating where you can have some rotating thunderstorms. A risk of tornadoes is possible with this, but really it's the wind swaths is what you look for, and this honestly looks, the most concerning. And we'll have to go back to this. And yeah, I mean, you can see what's going on here, right? I mean, line of storms develops here, sweeps across just about the entire state of Nebraska, even getting the southern sections of South Dakota, and certainly down here into Kansas too, northwestern Kansas. 50, 60, maybe as much as 70 mile per hour wind gusts is possible with this line of storms, guys. You can see how it goes hour by hour by hour. So quite intense. So please be aware of these damaging wind gusts. The western U.S., you're going to have some moisture out here in like eastern Utah. I think you'll have some moisture early this afternoon developing here in like northeastern Arizona. Some strong to severe storms possible here in western South Dakota. You're going to get some moisture going here in southern Montana. If you live out here in the plains of Montana, some storms are possible, especially once you get to the southern sections of the state. Some showers could dance around across here. I don't know why I've been saying dance around so much, guys. But nobody's complained, so I don't think it's annoying anybody. But some showers will kind of move around out here in Wyoming. Maybe a storm or two. Might even get a storm or two up here in the Pacific Northwest. We'll have to watch for that. But this energy will continue. We'll get into the overnight hours. Could get a development of some moisture across the western areas of Montana. Maybe that's some snow in the higher elevations. But look how the blue is beginning to show up on your map here. So we'll watch for this. This is kind of waking up tomorrow morning. Some snow begins to fall on some of the higher elevations of the northern Rockies and the Cascades. In fact, you look at the Cascades, this is between now and the end of the weekend. Several inches of snow is possible. Several thousand feet up. I mean, you got to get way up there. Even in some of the higher terrain of the Olympic Mountains, a few inches of snow is possible. And of course, we'll even look at like... let's look at Montana and Idaho here. I always struggle finding Idaho. Here it is. And, doesn't show a whole lot. But, you take it to Monday morning. I would say the end of the weekend, this is when there's an opportunity for the snow to start to add up a little bit. But you got to get way, way up there, guys, for sure. So, temperatures. 70s and 80s across the Northeast. Once you get into the Mid-Atlantic, you get into the 80s and 90s. And then, folks, once you get into the Southeast, it's going to be a hot summer day. The thing, though, here is, and I actually mentioned this morning on social media, even though you're seeing these mid to almost upper 90s across the Carolinas, Georgia, Alabama, you still got a bit of a dry heat in place, meaning the dew points are like in the 60s. You don't have high temperatures at 95, 96, 97 degrees, with dew points deep in the 70s. So it's going to be hot, no doubt, but you're really lacking that true nasty tropical humid heat that you typically get anywhere June through, sometimes September. So that's a blessing, right? Unless people just like to be hot and miserable and just feel swampy everywhere. But yeah, more of a dry heat. Now, maybe the Panhandle of Florida, you probably got a little bit more humidity. But anyway, it's pretty hot across the southern tier of the country. A nice zonal flow really showing up. It just kind of gets cooler and cooler the further north you get. So pretty hot across the central and southern plains, 90s, even some low 100s, getting all the way up into the 90s, all the way up to the northern plains. Montana, eastern Wyoming, and then just areas of the western Dakotas. So very hot, very, very hot across the southwest. Hot day in Las Vegas. Pretty pleasant day across the Valley of California, but there's that cooler air being brought to you by that upper trough that's moving in place. Now, you give you updates on the Storm Prediction Center for tomorrow. We have 2 slight risks. Level 2 out of 5 risk for tomorrow here across areas of the Central Plains and the Midwest. This is more so driven off that cutoff low that's sweeping through, cutoff embedded energy, I would say, sweeping through the Rockies right now. It's going to bring the shot of strong to severe storms across Nebraska, northeast Colorado that we just broke down. That same energy will eventually make its way east, bring a severe weather threat for Omaha, Lincoln, even to Des Moines, and then, could have some strong to severe storms as far south as Amarillo. But then there's another kind of embedded energy trough that's going to bring a shot at strong to severe storms across areas of northeastern Montana, northwestern North Dakota. Level 2 out of 5 risk, so definitely a risk, higher end risk of strong to severe storms up here. Tornado risk, 2% risk here, Omaha. You got the College World Series about to crank up. Watch out for that. 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour in both of these areas. And then the hail threat, 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. And then we got tomorrow, and then we got Sunday severe weather risk. Just a big marginal risk up here, nothing too concerning, level 1 out of 5. This could upgrade to a slight risk. And then we got Monday's severe weather risk, which has been highlighted for a few days now. As of now, slight risk still, just a 15% risk of severe weather within 25 miles in the given location. So it's going to be another active day up here like we saw a few days ago across the upper Midwest. But to give you an update on the tropics, this is still at a 40% chance. And it makes sense because some of the model guidance has dropped off a little bit on developing this. Not all of it. It's just not quite as aggressive, but still a decent chance of this developing. Right now, as of the 2 a.m. update Eastern Time, we have a 40% chance of this area of interest in the Bay of Campeche developing. And we still got a 20% chance of Invest 90L developing. Okay, so that's the latest information. They'll drop another update here in about 45 minutes probably. But to take a look at Invest 90L, this is it right here. And what we'll watch for is something into here to develop some sort of quick surface low before it moves into relatively cooler waters. But the chances are pretty low for this. No doubt there will probably be a pretty gnarly spin on the satellite visibility out here probably over the next day or two. But for the most part, this really isn't going to bother anybody. It's probably going to kick up some surf along the eastern seaboard. So, you might get some elevated risk of rip currents across the eastern U.S. because of this. But in general, if this develops, it's not going to bother anybody. But chances of it developing is pretty low. So we'll go on and just kind of put our eyes down here. We're going to just forget about Invest 90L, move past it, and then really begin to focus on this. There's a lot of green you're seeing down here. We're starting it off for Sunday morning, right? 12Z Sunday. That stands for Sunday morning, basically. So we'll take it into Sunday evening. A lot of moisture in the Gulf of Mexico, Western Caribbean. Then we'll take it into Monday evening. First off, I want you to note big plume of moisture based off the GFS. I mean, this is under 100 hours now, too. Monday evening, really pushing into Louisiana, even Arkansas, Mississippi, eastern Texas. We'll watch for this. Big push of moisture, okay? And then we'll watch something that we've been watching for a while, which is some sort of actual low pressure to develop, spin, tropical cyclone in the Bay of Campeche. And the GFS, not quite as aggressive with it as it used to be. Does pop the L right there next Wednesday morning, June the 19th. But honestly, never really fully develops anything. It just kind of crashes a lot of tropical moisture into southern, just the coastline of Texas and basically the entire, almost the entire Atlantic coastal side of Mexico. That moves past, right? Then the GFS really wants to pop up some sort of vortice off Central America or the northern sections of South America. And sometimes I like to call South America Africa. You guys correct me on this. I did that quite a few times last hurricane season. So if I say it, I know the differences between my continents. It's the same thing with the states, guys. Calling Florida, Texas, Texas, Florida. Just do it every once in a while. But the northern tip, the northern section of South America. I think I would say South Africa. I think that's what I would say. But anyways, moving past that. But we're starting to get into Thursday morning. We're getting into next Thursday evening. We're 6 days out at this point. kind of unreliable time frame, somewhat mid-range. Big area of moisture showing up down here in the central and western Caribbean. Then it pops off just a bona fide low pressure here and immediately goes sub 1,000. This is a week out from today. You got a full-fledged tropical storm in the western Caribbean about to cruise right into the Gulf of Mexico, and eventually it does. And guys, I don't even like to show you guys this stuff this far out, especially in the GFS, so please don't tell everybody and your cousins, uncles, grandpa that, you know, there's going to be a tropical storm or hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico next weekend. Please don't. This is just model guidance. Just model guidance, guys. But I'm sure somebody is going to post it irresponsibly on Facebook and put no cliff notes on it or anything like that. But anyways, you know, let me get off my soapbox here. But this does develop a full-fledged tropical system. It moves it into, you know, Alabama and the Panhandle of Florida. But the crazy thing is if you look at the run prior to this, it has a tropical system way over here, right? Run prior to that, kind of in the same area. Run prior to that, it's way over here. So, you know, it's just dancing around everywhere. A lot of times, the GFS likes to develop some sort of vortice off the northern sections of South America. And it's normally wrong. It does really bad in the mid to long range in the tropics, GFS, but it is something to watch. It can sniff out things for sure. So, what about the euro? Does it have any backing from the euro? Well, the euro is still, first off, you know, pretty gung-ho about developing something in the Bay of Campeche. It does sling some moisture, you know, into Louisiana, Texas, and this area right here early next week. Kind of like the GFS. Not as crazy, but certainly does. And then here comes the low pressure next Tuesday morning developing in the Gulf of Mexico, Bay of Campeche. I will tell you, the euro is a little bit further north. This would bring more impacts to the U.S. mainland. Sub 1,000 millibar low. I mean, is this thing about to make landfall in Brownsville? Well, one thing I'll tell you is there's going to be a big-time, large, moist bubble down here. No real shear to, you know, cutting off and making this ingest a lot of dry air. So as you can tell, this is next Thursday morning, still pretty far out. 996 millibar low, making landfall in Texas, but you're getting a ton. I wish I had my cursor up. A ton of tropical moisture getting pushed into the coastline and even into interior sections of Texas. So I do think there's just going to be a huge area of moisture right here tomorrow regardless. So that moves in, brings some impacts. What about what the GFS is showing down here in the Caribbean? Okay, we keep going. Where is it? Well, it's nowhere. So that should tell you what you need to know, right? But, you know, we look at some of the European ensemble guidance, and this takes us pretty much 9 days out. Really just shows members in the Bay of Campeche, but even this has kind of dropped off a little bit. But it doesn't show much developing back here in the Western Caribbean like the operational GFS model is showing. Now, let's see if we have some more runs. We can only go about 138 hours out on the latest GFS ensemble. But so this is only going to take us through about, what does this take us to? The evening of June the 19th. Next Wednesday, I believe. Shows this high signal for something developing down here in the Bay of Campeche. But, you know, what about, you know, let's see if we can move this. This is always a little bit more difficult to figure out. There it is, model cycle. Weather Nerds is a really cool site, guys. It's free. It's a little tricky to use sometimes, but let's go 240 hours out. So we'll kind of zoom in, Mitch, zoom into this area. And it does show something developing down here, getting into the Gulf of Mexico, but I'm not buying what the GFS is showing yet. I need some agreement from the European model. I really do. So that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. Y'all have an awesome Friday. And I'm going to try to squeeze out a video sometime in the evening, sometime this weekend. I've noticed the evening videos are just not, they're not getting a lot of views at all. But, you know, you can't just make videos based off views. But, of course, you know, it's always going to be personal. I'll be honest. You know, of course, you want more views. But, you know, when you spend a lot of time on those evening videos, and especially in the evening where it takes more time out with your family and stuff like that, and a lot of people don't watch it, it's a little bit more difficult to be motivated to make those. But regardless, the evening videos will be a thing when we're actually tracking something significant, whether it's a winter storm, a hurricane, or a major severe weather event. You know how we do on this channel. But anyways, you guys have a great start to your weekend. Stay safe out there. God bless all y'all, and I'll talk to you soon.